Hello and welcome to the Be Formless Flow Driven CEO podcast, where we are reshaping life, leadership, and business. Today, I'm welcoming from Tokyo in Japan, one of my most favorite cities in the world, Johnny Shields. Welcome to the show, Johnny.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, B.
No, thank you. I can't stop. That picture is mesmerizing. It's just such a beautiful. Purple is one of my favorite colors, but just the way that you're standing there and it's just
Oh, me too.
yeah,
Me too.
yeah, it's very
I
cool.
made purple as actually my company color too,
Yeah.
intentionally because it's my favorite color as
Well, there
well.
you go. Well, I've got my purple specs on. So these are Designer B brand, by the way, through with my optometrist, Wink Optometry, just plugging in as well. But so you're Tokyo based. You've got quite the diverse career, and you have been living in Tokyo. You said for 17 plus years. Previously, you were in Seattle, hence the American accent. But you're
That's
like,
right.
what do you call it? A local in Tokyo? Like, is there a like? Is it like? What's a local called?
The local,
Like
sorry.
a local somebody local from Tokyo. Do you have a term for them, or is it just
Oh, like a Tokyoite or
Yeah,
Tokyoojin in
yeah,
Japanese. Yeah.
yeah, cool. Well, you're
Yeah, Tokyoite maybe in English. Yeah.
sorry, that was just a random question for you, wasn't it? But
No worries.
yeah, you're the founder and CTO of TableCheck, which is a
That's
Tokyo-based
right.
restaurant booking and guest experience platform. And you just said to me you've served over 14,000 venues across 35 countries, including, Australia. You said the Hyatt Sydney you've had partnerships with, but predominantly you're working with the Japanese market. And what Table Check and if I get any of this wrong, because I'm watching you and I'm waiting for you, but maybe it's just but yeah, if I get anything wrong, you can correct me. But TableCheck helps restaurants convert first-time diners into loyal fans by unifying reservations, CRM, and guest data to reduce that reliance on paid booking channels. You're also a Brown University grad who worked in, let's just say, algorithmic trading at Nomura, and you did a lot of nanotechnology research from what I can see. So lots of global finance experience. You also have this path in terms of you're a muso and you built studios. So you've had quite the non-linear career path, if I like. You haven't just kind of gone next, next, next. It's like lots of different things have
Sure.
happened. And
Yeah.
you now focus on practical AI and repeatable leadership habits as part of what you're doing with Table Check. One thing that super fascinated me was when you booked in the for the pod and I asked you around what's that one unique insight or lived experience when it comes to life leadership and or business. You did call out the pretty diverse career, but you said to me, like, I think leadership is not a one-time event, but rather a habit we practice every day, like brushing one's teeth. And I had a giggle about that. And then you said, I'm sure there are many interesting things we can talk about, but I do really want to talk about this leadership piece and obviously your career. And yeah, I'll hand it over to you.
Sure. Well, I don't really know where to start. I mean, yeah, we could talk about my current company. We could talk about all the stuff I've done in the past. For me, I think my current company is actually in some ways the long, because I've been running it for 13 years. It's kind of the
Yes.
longest era in my life when I've been doing the same thing. Uh, and I think about in high school, my interest in music, in college, doing engineering and other things. I think the one unifying thread for me is I always love to create, and I always love, even as a kid playing with Legos. I think I was born just to create and bring new ideas into the world. And that's what I think with my company now, TableCheck, that it's really exciting. We just sort of picked this restaurant industry. I'm not a career, chef or anything. I wish I was. I wish I was cool as Anthony Bourdain, but um, for me, it's more about we looked at an industry where we really learned. I'll tell the story. So I was I worked so prior to my current thing, I worked at Nomura before that Lehman Brothers. I worked in algorithmic trading and I built computer systems that traded the stock market automatically. And a lot of that was, about being the fastest to trade and, network latency and things like that. So it was a very complex engineering challenge. It was very fun. I worked with a very talented team to do that. And there was a scandal in my bank, nothing to do with me, but as a result, many people were laid off, and I was one of them. And so I was looking for something to do, and I was going out to restaurants because Tokyo has a wonderful
Oh,
restaurant
that's so
scene.
good.
In fact,
I'm like thinking about the food right
when I was
now.
in, yeah, yeah, well, really any kind of food. It's not just Japanese food, right?
No.
It's really any kind of food,
Yeah.
whether you're looking for French, Italian, whatever it is, you can find really world-class, you know, gastronomy, all over the city, and so many chefs who are, if you go to Italian restaurant, there's a good chance the chef studied in Milan and or Venice, and brings back really the authentic tradition to their cuisine here. So that's always really intrigued me. And at the on my trading desk, we had a Zagat's guide. For some reason, they didn't like Michelin. They preferred the Zagat's guide, and they circled every basically we would circle restaurants in the guide that we liked or that we went to, and we would write our own ratings next to it. So if anybody needed to book a restaurant, we would just say, hey, can you give me the Zagat's guide? And then you'd find something, you'd read people's notes, and then you could actually ask the other, your friends,
Yeah,
the
right.
people, your coworkers, about what the experience was like. So I've always wanted to create that platform that is really a social platform around food. I think our company is finally 13 years after our inception getting around to doing it. But I always had in my mind, that restaurants were something I always really loved in Japan. So anyway, in 2012, I was laid off and I was going out to restaurants with my friends and with the guy who became my eventual business partner. And we had booked a restaurant online, and we went to the restaurant and we saw that our name was written down in a pencil and paper ledger, and we were greeted that way. And we kind of thought, huh, that's weird. Like we booked online on some booking site,
Yeah, but then it's
but
paper and
then
pen.
yeah, it got offline. How did that happen? And so we actually asked the restaurant and said, hey, we know you're busy now, but can we come back between lunch and dinner tomorrow and just ask you a few questions? And so they said, okay, sure. So we came back. No one's in the restaurant. We go there, sit down with the guy and say, so about yesterday, we saw our name, printed we saw that you had written our name down. We're wondering how did what's the flow there? How did that happen? And the the staff there said, oh yeah, well, so what we do is we get all these online reservations, we print out all the emails, and then one of our junior staff will copy them by hand
Oh my
into this
God.
ledger. And we said, well, doesn't that, take
So much
take a ton
time.
of time? And
Yeah.
yeah, and doesn't that, and you're like, yeah, it takes 2 or 3 hours a day. And not only that, they would actually keep very detailed notes on all the guests, what the preferences are. So if they come back, so they were actually very, it was all done by hand. And so they had
Precision.
this very high
Yeah.
quality of service, but it was all done through just brute force manual work. And so we looked at each other and we're like, hasn't anybody made an app for this? And they're like, no, no one has really done it in Japan, at least nothing. I think the bottleneck was that there were actually so many booking sites. So it wasn't just one site like OpenTable they were printing out from, but it was actually 5 or 6 sites they would have to do. And so the first thing we did was built technology that would aggregate all these bookings together, and it would put them all in one list for you, and then you could just print out, you could press print on the PDF, and there's your list, and you don't have to do it by hand anymore. But then once we did that, they said, well, that's great, but can you make it so that I can control which guest is seated at what table, and make it so I can have I can tag the guest with who's a VIP, who likes red
Yeah.
wine, etc. And then, can you connect to my point of sale system so I can see how each guest is spending? So we just kind of gradually built from there based on that initial idea of, automating a manual process to really making that process something that was measurable and something that could really be, ultimately our system being the center of all the operations in the restaurant. And that's what we've achieved. I would say a number of years ago, we had reached a good level of sophistication. I mean, we're continually pushing it further, but um, I would say by I would say 5 years in, we had probably a pretty good system that could do, most of that. Of course, there's always new things to add. There's
Yeah.
marketing and so for us, it's about, connecting to new systems and new sources of data and doing new types of analytics, doing, machine learning based forecasting or any, number of things like that. Um, but I think for us now, what we're really doing is we're looking at not only the in-restaurant operation side, but also now looking at a booking channel. Um, and what we've always sort of since our early days, we've always accepted. Restaurants could sign up for our platform and they could accept reservations through our system. But what we're now really looking at doing is actually getting sort of critical mass of customer traffic
Mhm.
where, customers can go to tablecheck.com, search for restaurants, and then building this community around that. I think that's the real next step for our business for where we are right now.
Yeah,
So
wow.
I'll pause there if there's
Yeah, what a
any
story. So
yeah
you
questions.
started with one restaurant basically. You
Yeah.
started your business in one, like with one restaurant and seeing a problem. You spotted a problem. Is that right? Like it's pretty much where you started, right?
That's more or less right. I mean, in fact, in the early days, it feels like it took almost 2 years before anyone would really sign up for our system. I think
Yeah,
Japan is such a risk-averse market
totally.
where, we would go to restaurants and say, okay, we've built this system, we built this solution, and, they'd go, oh, it looks really great, but who are your other clients? And we'd be like, well, you could be the first one.
Yeah, I've worked a lot,
And
lot with the Japanese just on that, and Asahi
yeah,
and great brands and great people,
sure.
great culture. But I always have these, and I'm sure every culture has like a different, like we all have different cultures from a business perspective, right? Some more similar and not. But yes
Yeah,
means you think yes. But I always found yes meant no because it was a
yeah,
nodding and a yes, but they wanted it was never on the dotted line. It was always okay, but we want more information or we want more research or we want more proof.
that's right.
And you're going,
Yeah.
it's just like this, and you have to have so much patience and the ability to be able to continue to provide because they are so risk adverse. Did you have those situations as well where you were like, you said, oh, you could be our first client. That would be major risk for, you know.
Yeah, I think we ultimately had to find, we were cold calling restaurants and this is 2013 that we were, launching in. I think we had to find restaurants who had such dire operational needs that they said, okay, we'll overlook the fact that this is a new
They're
product
desperate.
and this
Yeah.
solves a burning problem for us. So one of those restaurants was a 120-year-old sukiyaki restaurant in called Imahan that a famous restaurant in Japan, and their their staff was mostly a lot of their staff were middle-aged women who had never really used an iPad before. And we actually, wearing kimonos, a very, formal service restaurant. And so we were actually worried that we you know, it might be difficult to train them to use our system, but we, we went in, did a training session, just press this, totally got the hang of it, and then they were off to the races. And then, they're still a client 13
They,
years later. So
yeah.
yeah,
So tell us a
yeah.
little bit
So
about the pivot, like no, I shouldn't say pivot, but tell us a little bit about 13 years in as an entrepreneur, 13 years in business. And you talk around this leadership is not a one-time event, but a rather a habit we practice every day. Talk to me a little bit about how you've applied that in building your own business, because as an entrepreneur, well, no day is the same, right? Like you said it took you close to 2 years to get someone a client on board in terms of a paying client, no doubt. And then, tell
mm,
us a little bit about, yeah, your statement around I think leadership is not a one-time event, but rather a habit we practice, and how that applies to your to TableCheck.
sure. Well, I think one leader I really admire, just business leader, whose style I somewhat try to emulate, is Jensen Huang, who's the CEO of NVIDIA, I think now the most valuable public company in the world. They make the graphics cards that, the GPUs that power AI. And he said some great stuff. One thing that he says is that, so first of all, he has 60 direct reports, which for a CEO, you'd think that's a lot, right? Because what you're told in management school
Not.
is that, okay, as a CEO, you should have maybe five direct reports, and then they have five, and you have
Yeah,
this very hierarchical pyramid structure where everything is delegated. And I think that, and in fact, in my business at various times, I was kind of told by other people in the company, got me in a room, the head of HR and various people. They said, Johnny, you really you have to hire managers who then will delegate to, mid-level managers who will then delegate to junior managers, and then finally it will go down, trickle down to your coders or whoever staff, And for me, I've never felt that that works well with my personality, because I've always thought that it's like if I've hired everybody, including junior staff, I have about 100 people that I directly, manage, and then I have a business partner who's, more overseeing the sales and the marketing and general affairs and things like that. I've thought, if I hire anybody, then why shouldn't I just be able to sit down and talk with anybody, regardless of the
who they are.
level of, so yeah, so-called seniority. In some ways, I've always felt that I can actually help the most junior people the most, just by talking to them directly, finding where the problems are. And for me, it's not a huge use, it's not like an hour of my time spent directly one-on-one with, with somebody who's out of college, actually could be very, very valuable for them and could really point them in the right direction, rather than playing a constant game of telephone, and then
Yeah,
and
you
kind
lose.
of having to, and so at some point, I'd hired all these managers, and then some point, I want to talk to, someone who's somewhere in the middle of the hierarchy, and then they say, oh, you mean you want to set up a skip level meeting? And I'm like, what do you mean a skip level meeting? And it's like, well, you're only allowed to have meetings with the people who are directly below you. So you have to set up a special skip level meeting in order to skip the level down to someone who's lower in the hierarchy. And I'm like,
What is this?
guys, this is stupid. Like, let's just all recognize that we're human beings, and that we're all on the same team, pulling ahead. And so for me, one thing that I do is I just say the same thing to everybody. If there's somebody who needs advice, or someone who comes to me with a question, I mean, for me, I don't even really, you would ask me to kind of, in my bio, to pick out a certain event of leadership, but it happens every day. So, as an example, yesterday in someone in a there was a public thread, but someone said, well, we're working on training AI models. And one of the guys who works for me said, so, and I'm going to butcher what he said. I'm maybe gonna I'm going to if he's listening, then he's
100%.
going to
Yeah.
come to me and say this isn't exactly what I said, but something to the effect of, okay, I want to learn to train AI models, and I want you to pay me. First, you have to pay me how much you would pay a top AI researcher, and then I'll learn how to do it. And I said to him, and I said to everybody, like, okay, well, interesting idea. I went to the Los Angeles Lakers basketball team and I said, pay me a $10 million contract. And if you do that, then I'll learn to shoot three throws, and three pointers as good as Steph Curry. And I'm like, look, it's just not how the world works.
No,
And so it's the kind of thing though that I don't single that person out and make them feel bad. That's not the goal at all. But just to say to anyone, I said, look, if you want to learn and you want to push yourself to develop those skills, which, you're starting from effectively zero today in terms of, you haven't ever worked in that area, just like I've never really played
yeah,
much
yeah, yeah.
basketball. Then I'll be fully supportive, and I'll actually give you we could carve out 30 or 50% of your time at this company. I'll give you 2 or 3 days a week. You can
Do
just
it.
go learn and go develop those skills. And if you learn that stuff and you start producing results, then I'm like the pay raise will take care of itself. And at that point, I'd have to pay you more because if you have those highly in
Skills,
demand
100%.
skills, then you
Yeah.
can just go to some other company too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, I want to give everyone frameworks to operate and to think about not only what they're doing in their job, what we do when we're coding or doing product management or sales, but also I want to give them the tool to think about developing their career. And I think that all of that starts with a fundamental recognition that they're here in the company by choice. No one is forcing them.
No.
No one is forcing anybody to work in our company. I want to create an environment where everybody can maximally succeed and I can maximally, the company can get the maximum benefit of everyone's talent,
Yeah.
right? But it's also the case that if I hire 100 people, that it might not work out for every one of those 100 people,
No.
and it might be the case for some of those people that the
Yeah.
best path is actually outside the company too. And
Yeah.
so I want to look at supporting people holistically to grow, to develop skills within our company and giving them the bandwidth to do that. But I also want them to think broadly about, you're only given one life. Life is short. You have to be doing the things you love. And if you feel like this company is a dead end job that you're stuck in, then we should really talk about other
Yeah.
other
Totally.
options, either inside the company or elsewhere.
Yeah, you're giving
Yeah.
like, well, for me, you're giving life skill, you're giving life advice, life skills as well, like, which is,
Right.
I feel like
Yeah.
it's great leadership, and it makes sense now in terms of it's not a one-time event, it's daily habits. It's like brushing your teeth each and every day. And,
Yeah.
funnily enough, I concur with you in terms of like, I love the way you talk about you breaking down the hierarchy in terms of going from that hierarchical to almost like a decentralized structure, if you like, right? Someone
Right.
still needs to call the shots at times, but the ability to be able to, it's so top down, bottom up sort of thing. And yet there's such an opportunity
Yeah.
like to be able to connect with, like you say, the most junior person, because I know, when I had 150 staff in my previous role, I was very much like you. I'd talk to everybody. I had twice a week what was called Be Connected sessions where people were able to come to me in those sessions. Yeah,
Very
and it
good.
was like they had like 15 minutes with me and it was to talk about anything or anything everything. But at least it was the
Yeah.
ability to but I learned. I learned as well as a leader. Like I was learning from these younger ones as well. And so it gave me this ability to be way more in touch with the people, and I think that is continuously, I think it's the way forward. Like I just don't think the old
Absolutely.
world of
Yeah.
hierarchy is the way, business says. But it's
Yeah.
interesting that you were calling it out around the skip. I've never heard of what was it called? The
Skip level. Yeah,
skip level.
I thought that was the most somebody said that buzzword to me, and I was like,
I would
this
have
is the most
lost
ridiculous
I
thing
would
I've
have
ever
lost my
heard.
mind. I want to talk to you now just about
Yeah,
creativity, right? You said you've been
yeah,
creating since you were little, you played with Lego.
yeah,
I love Lego, right?
yeah,
And you've obviously had, let's call it a non-linear path, a really diverse career.
yeah, sure.
In terms of creativity, and you said you've been in TableCheck, or TableCheck's been running now for what, 13 years, which is, huge. Like it's not easy, and obviously through COVID and everything else. Talk to me a little bit about the creativity that you like to invoke in the business from a cultural perspective, and obviously, when you've had a business for 13 years, it is constantly the need to shape and reshape.
Right.
Creativity must play a really big role in that. How do you, yeah,
Sure.
okay,
Yeah, I think kind of creativity and curiosity are this are two sides of the same coin.
mm,
So um I think that's a vital trait to foster within all, everybody on our team, right? That we should be continually learning new things. I think this year the thing to learn du jour is definitely AI. I think that's one of the things that has the possibility to revolutionize so many, AI tooling and using that to incorporate that in our work has the possibility to revolutionize so much of what we do in our productivity. Of course, people also cite, you know, horrendously bad, you
yeah,
know, uh, examples of AI that, of course, are like, I think when we talk about that, it, in my view, it's kind of like in some ways those discussions. It's like if we were lumberjacks using chainsaws and someone says, yeah, but someone got into a horrific chainsaw accident. I'll be like, okay, yes, let's talk about safety and let's make sure we don't
totally.
do that. Let's make sure we're using it correctly. But, like we shouldn't dwell all of our,
No,
we should
not doom and
recognize that,
gloom.
yes, that,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. But so I think that basically fundamental creativity is, yeah, it's just so important. And it's something that you can't really teach. I think you need to find people who are naturally curious people and naturally want to just learn how things work. They see something new and they go, "Oh, cool," let me take that apart. For me, it was when I was a kid, I was taking apart electronics all the time just to see what was inside and then learning to modify them. I had a Game Boy that didn't have a light inside of it. So I opened it up and I found out how to solder in a light that I could then see my screen
cool.
better,
I love that.
And
Yeah,
so those kind of things that I think that there's the phrase that he who has a why can bear any how. And I think that fundamentally, if you want to do something, right, and you know, if you're obsessed with achieving that one result, you will be creative. You will go out and you'll learn all the things you need to learn in order to achieve that goal. And so I kind of want, my fundamental philosophy is to hire talented people who have that curiosity and have that ability, to just to find their own way, you know, and give them hard problems and say, hey, figure this out. This is why the problem is important. And then, I say, I don't know how to solve it, but maybe you can figure it out and just point them in that direction and then just go until we come up with something that's workable. And so I think that, yeah, there's definitely an aspect of creativity and curiosity that is hard to teach, but at the same time, we do a lot of events like hackathons, or really we just have a thing. We have a rule in our company that you can literally spend 20% of your time doing whatever you want. Doesn't matter as long as it's vaguely related to learning something new that will benefit you, or it's very broad, benefit you and your skills in some way, benefit the company in any way. Basically, you could probably fit anything underneath
I
this
love that.
umbrella.
It's so
And
good.
so, yeah,
And
yeah. So, yeah,
and
go ahead.
do you think that's what's kept you going? Like in terms of, like the 13 years later, like, do you think that having that, creativity and the curiosity, like, do you ever have moments where you're like, I'm getting bored, or like, or like as an entrepreneur, right? Or this is like, I'm ready for my next, challenge or opportunity, or is that what keeps
Yeah.
you going? Like, is it the
Well,
music?
I never get bored. I think that sometimes I get a little bit distracted on just, sometimes I go down rabbit holes, but I always am
Don't we
learning
all?
something new.
Yeah,
Um, and so I'm always exploring something. So as long as I can emerge from that rabbit hole and say, well, okay, maybe the thing I did wasn't directly related to the company, but I learned something new
yeah,
that
yeah,
will benefit me at some point. Because you just never know. I mean, that's one of the things I've learned is you just never know. Um, I think one of the things that really, in order to succeed today, especially in a creative enterprise like engineering, you really need to be developing a skill stack. You actually need to have many broad, different types of skills that that are overlapping that you can apply to each other and solve problems across multiple domains. So I think that, kind of hopping around to different areas and learning new things, those things will inevitably benefit you in some other area. I mean, for me, for example, in college, I did I worked in a laboratory we called it the Laboratory for Impossible Technologies. It was actually the for emerging technologies, but we called it impossible technologies. And I had a wonderful thesis advisor there, my professor, Professor Jimmy Shu, who really taught me to charge at hard problems with the idea that, this is crazy, but, there's a way to solve it. There's eventually a way to bring this in, to take this thing that's sounds like a pie in the sky idea and bring it into reality. And I still definitely carry that with me today. And I think that that's an attitude that when we approach problems from sort of first principles, thinking about, okay, what do we want to achieve? What raw ingredients do we have to work with? What are the fundamental constraints and limits of nature? For example, like if we're trying to
solve a
do
big problem.
trading, which I was doing before, there's the limit of how fast light can travel,
Yeah,
right? That's a fun. So, in order to send a message from our system to to the exchange, the fastest that message can arrive at the exchange, the stock exchange, is the speed of light. So, within that constraint, but then we would think like, for example, if we're trading between two different exchanges that are separated geographically, suppose it's Australia and Tokyo, well, then we have to think about what's the speed that light can travel, through either fiber optic cables, and light travels a certain speed through those. But what if we were to change it to satellite or microwave transmission or something like that, and you would have a different, you could actually go much closer to the speed of light if you do
mm,
that. So that kind of thinking about, removing constraints and then thinking about what's possible. And then, the question is, okay, how much would it cost to get microwave towers set up? And there's actually companies out there that looked at, for example, New York and Chicago and said, yeah, it's going to cost us maybe $50 million to buy up all these microwave towers, but we'll make $1 billion in profit. So, that kind of thinking of well, actually it's worth it to do in that case. And so I'm very interested in those kind of hard problems, but things that, really you can think about outside the box of what's actually possible to achieve and then work backwards from
yeah.
that.
Go
Obviously,
outside the
time
box
and
and then go
money.
back into the box,
Yeah.
right? Like it's like that first.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you have to ultimately make it into something that is, there's no points for just an idea or a half-finished
no, it's got to
product.
be
You have to get
tangible.
it actually
Yeah,
out to the market.
yeah.
And so,
I love that, and I think
yeah,
yeah,
go
I
ahead.
love it.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, I think you can apply that to leadership as well and business in terms of what you're talking about here is like, it's not just charge at the hard problems. It's also like thinking about things when, nothing's impossible, everything's possible. And so like, in 2026, it really is the year to like look at everything more than ever and go, hang on a second, is this the right style of leadership? Like, is this how, are we getting the best out of our teams? It's kind of again like looking at it like, charging at it as you could look at it as a hard problem, but yeah, I love your thinking around. I mean, I love first principles thinking full stop, and then obviously the critical thinking component too. But I think it really is about being open-minded, the ability to be super curious, have the courage to also step out of your comfort zone because anything is possible. And we have to kind of somewhat ignore all the old ways of the way we've done things to really be able to move forward.
That's right. I mean, I think there's so many good examples of I think the other thing too is really to question everything and just say, okay, why is it that, something is non-optimal, and
Yes.
why is it? Why do we do that? And isn't that weird that we actually do things that way? Because we get so used to
Doing
our normative frame of reference that we forget that of all the possible, ways things could be, that are not the way things are today. But this I think it was Grace Hopper who was computing pioneer, who said that the most dangerous words in the English language are "we've always done it this way."
That's a good one. Yeah,
you know
it's
and
such a good
so
one. We've always done it
yeah,
this way. I can't stand it. Oh, I love it. So good. Johnny, it's been such a great chat. I feel like we could, I wish I was in Tokyo right now and we were out at a restaurant
sure,
having a good
yeah.
old chit chat. I think we could talk for hours. What would be one tip, advice you would like to share with the audience? I'm going to keep it really open-ended for you.
Well, geez, I mean, the biggest one that comes to mind is uh, explore that if it's relevant for 2026, is if you are a curious person, even if you think of yourself as not a technical person, start to explore the various AI tools that are out there, because
Yeah,
they're really miraculous in what they can do. Not just, we all know Chat GPT. There's one by there's a great one for coding called Claude that's
yeah,
out there.
yeah,
um but I think that people shouldn't be afraid to create and learn. I mean, I think that one of the things that I think that these are such powerful learning tools. We often think of them as doing things for us, and we're worried that, it's just going to replace what we do. But we should really see it in the opposite, that actually you can ask it to explain you literally anything, and it will do a very, very good job of
yeah,
explaining. And if you're not happy with that explanation, you can drill down and say, oh, you said this word, what does that mean? And then, and you can do that as many times as you want. And so I think that for learning tools, uh, I think it's just so powerful, especially for adults you're out of high school or college, and it might feel hard to learn new things in your life. So,
yeah. Good one.
because you're no longer in school, right? But
Yeah,
from that, I think that really, um, I think if you have that curiosity to just fundamentally, just try making things with it. And
see
for me,
what's
one that I
possible.
really, and I'll say my favorite AI tool is Suno. I don't know if people have heard of this, but it's a music generating AI,
Yes,
and it
I've
can
used it.
generate.
So good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's so good, right?
yeah, it's so
And it's
cool. Yeah,
incredible what.
you can create.
So, and that's not, I talk to, of course, it doesn't mean anything about, if someone's a musician, then it doesn't negate all the talent they have. And what that does, that's more remarkable to me. Somebody's a master
Yeah, I agree.
cellist or,
I agree.
piano player or whatever. But I think that we should, I think that these tools allow us to explore new almost like new planes of existence, new possibilities of what we can create. And
Love
for me,
it.
that's just so tremendously exciting.
Yeah,
And
great.
yeah, I'm really it's an exciting time to be alive, let's say.
Yeah, I agree. I couldn't agree with you more. And it's a good way to end the conversation. The one caveat I'll have is it's so important to learn, and there's so much to learn. But I think we've also just got to be able to switch off and step away and, have the break from all the learning. And because you can, like you say, when you go down those rabbit holes, and I know when I step away and, to kind of decompress from all the tech and all the information, that's where your real fresh perspectives kick in, because you've immersed yourself in it, but then you have that ability. So, something like a Suno where you're playing with your music or creating music, it's taking you off into another place. And I think that's where, once you've learned what you've learned,
Yeah,
the ideas can then come to you, and then how do you put them into practice? So, Johnny,
yeah, definitely. I agree.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Stepping away is important. For me, I feel like I never fully switch off. People who know me would know I'm just always doing something. I feel like it's like a shark swimming through water. Like apparently they have to always swim or they die. I don't know if that's true, but I think that's kind of me too. Like the
Yeah,
joke in my company is I never sleep. I actually do sleep for anyone watching this. But
I know,
sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night. I get some idea. I'm so excited to try it that,
hilarious.
then I can't sleep. So yeah,
Yeah, you're hilarious. I used
yeah,
to, I get quite often asked. I think it's just energy as well. And if you're curious
yeah,
and got that beginner's mindset, people like they go, "Do you ever switch off?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course I switch off. Of course I have to." Like, but it doesn't not mean that things are percolating away in my mind as I'm, sitting there. Like
right,
it's just who you are. It's like this. I always do this
right.
because she's got so many different fingers, because she's always got like different ideas. Anyway, Johnny, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for coming on the show. How do we find out more about TableCheck? How do we find out more about you?
Well, just go to tablecheck.com if you're looking to book a restaurant in Japan. We're building that. Hopefully, it will come to Australia soon. I don't know when. But yeah, for TableCheck, if you're a restaurant and you want a killer system to manage your guests and do marketing and all that stuff all in one package, then yeah, definitely go to tablecheck.com, click the four restaurants thing in the corner and
Off you
find
go.
us. And yeah, that's basically it. I don't have a blog or anything like that. I
Should.
should,
I think
but
you.
I
I
don't.
think it'd be great. You should get it all out. Like it'd be. I'd read it.
Uh,
All these
one of
ideas.
those
Like,
days.
yeah, one of these days. No,
One of those
like
days.
definitely.
Yeah.
And we can find you on LinkedIn as well. But I've got that in my show notes. So, Johnny, on that note, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I've thoroughly enjoyed, and I love the way you are continuously shaping and reshaping what is life leadership and business. So thank you for coming on the Be Formless Flow Driven CEO podcast. Have a great, what is it? It's morning, right? Early morning?
Morning. It's 10 a.m.
There you
almost.
go. Where it's
I think
only
I'm
a couple of
two
hours.
hours earlier.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
Johnny, thank you so much. Have a great
Yeah.
Friday.
You too. Thank you very much, B. It was my pleasure.
No, take care.